Welcome to Talk to Me Nice, Communication Gone Wild, where we tackle all the ways words can build bridges or burn them down.
We're your hosts, here to dive into the quirks, challenges, and straight up chaos of modern communication in this digital first world.
From hilarious text fails to awkward Zoom moments, we'll explore how we connect, misconnect, and everything in between.
With expert insights, real-life stories, and a little bit of humor, we're here to help you navigate the messy, fascinating world of communication.
Because let's be honest, talking to each other shouldn't be this hard, but it is. Welcome back to our third episode of Talk to Me Nice podcast, where we dive into real life communication issues. Today, we'll be diving into what do you mean by that, decoding mixed signals and ambiguous messages in the professional settings. And we're your hosts, Ashley,
Keyshawn.
Tamika.
And Tim.
So let's get into the juicy topic today. Decoding mixed signals and ambiguous messages in a professional setting. I don't know about you guys, but we know how the receiver and the sender sometimes are not on one accord. Can we dive into the history of when text messaging or emails even started?
Well, just a brief history of mixed signals. It started way before words. Early humans relied on gestures, facial expressions, which often led to misinterpretations. Then the Greeks and Romans studied rhetoric and how tone changes meaning. Then there was the digital age, where texting, email, social media removed tones, making misunderstandings more common. And then what we face now is like ghosting, vague replies, and unclear emails, which creates daily confusion. Just a brief example is the Cold War. A mistranslation during the Cuban Missile Crisis almost led to a nuclear war. The Russian phrase, "we will bury you," was meant metaphorically, but the US took it as a direct threat. And then in the workplace, when a boss says, "that's an interesting idea," it could mean they love it or hate it, but don't want to say so directly.
Well,
I love that. So it is very true that I giggled at the part where you said that that's an interesting, interesting like message or interesting comment because I feel like we all have done that. We all have referred to the previous email that I've sent you when people reach out to via email on, hey, like why hasn't this been done? Tim, you have any juicy stories for us today?
So, with this one, I will admit I struggled with this a little bit because the word ambiguous or ambiguity always throws me off a little bit. And I looked it up and found some definitions, like confusing, or even in even in the show description today, the mixed signals. And I kind of took that to mean, well, exactly what it means, mixed signals, or kind of wishy-washy or whatever, or it could mean this, or it could mean this, you never know. And so I went to ChatGPT because I needed ideas, and just basically asked, like, what would be a good story to tell, in this situation? And it gave me two things. It said, that statement opens the door to all kinds of intriguing stories. Here are a few different angles you could take. And a couple of them were like science fiction-y type stuff. I was like, all right, I'm not doing that. But two things that came up were like personal drama and romance. And then another one was like a workplace thriller. Now, I don't know if anything I have is all that intense, but it did lead me to think about a couple of things. So on a personal front, and this was years ago, but still it kind of flows with the history in that a lot of this communication was done either via email or even the early days of texting and all that, when you had to do everything on like the number dial, like, to hit a C, it had to be like you had to hit 2-3 times, or whatever. And that's that whole bit. But a relationship I was in a long time ago, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, ended rather badly. And most of that was on me because of, I know I shared on the last episode about some of my personal history and some issues I used to have. And this all kind of plays together. But the relationship I was in, towards the end of it, it got to the point where I think we were together for like 2.5 years. And the last year or so of it, it was just like get together, break up, get together, break up, get together, break up. And a lot of that was me sending, mixed messages or not being very clear about where I was. And I think for me, it was like, on one hand, and I'm sure people can relate to this, like I wanted her around, when she wasn't there, but then when she was, I didn't, or I might have wanted her around for certain things, but didn't want the relationship. And like, I was confused about where I wanted to be. And I'm sure I confused the crap out of her with all my mixed messages, like, oh, come over, don't come over. Like, hey, I love you, but like, not really, what I'm saying? Like, so from a personal standpoint, I think I came across as very confusing and very maybe ambiguous as far as not being able to like leaving my feelings up to interpretation as far as how I felt about the relationship and how things were going. That went on for a while, and then eventually she just got tired of my BS, and we went our separate ways. And I beat myself up about that for a really, really long time. The problems I already had got, exponentially worse. But years later, I kind of desensitized myself to the entire relationship process. I went like 9 years just kind of doing whatever, doing whoever, whatever, humping everything in the world, for lack of a better way to put it, until I met my current wife. But even then, it was like I carried some of that baggage in with me. And I would say for the first year of our relationship, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, okay, well, I want you around, but I really don't. We broke up like a bunch of times in that first year. And to be honest with you, we've been together for 15, we're in our 16th year, been married for 4, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know why she's with me, because, I was completely just confusing and just, completely ambiguous as far as how I really felt. One day it was this, the next day it was that, and I don't think in either situation, the other person was able to make sense of the mixed messages that I was sending, so that's one instance. So the other one that Chat GPT gave me, that's hard to say, was Workplace Thriller. Now, this wasn't anything that I personally experienced. Now, I know we all get mixed messages in the corporate world and everything else, and we see it in the celebrity stuff, and I know we'll get to that a little bit later. But like for me, one of the there was a situation, I want to say it was about 3 years ago, where there was a nurse manager. Like we have different managers over in our overall department. I think there's like 3 of them. And one of them was over the nurses and like the appeal side of like the medical stuff that I do. And I don't know what happened. I was on vacation. I was in North Carolina, and a friend of mine at work sent me a snip of an email that she saw or whatever. And it was this nurse manager who I guess had just gotten fired. And she sent out this scathing email, like ripping everyone apart and all this kind of stuff. But in part of the email, it was very, and I'm hoping this is a good example. If not, you guys let me know. But it was like it was very confusing because she said some things about one of the directors or the CEOs or whatever of the service center I work for. Like she was very unclear. Like it was a situation like, she basically said like, hey, because I think she was Latino herself. But she was like, oh, every Latino here needs to watch out because such and such will come for you, much like her, like her husband did, 20 something years ago. And I was like, well, what's that all about? Like it was very unclear. It was like, are you calling her racist? Are you calling the husband racist? Like what's going on here? And it prompted me to go back and do other research into this particular person that, the accusation was made against. And I found all this information about something that happened to this lady's husband or something that this lady's husband did like 20 years ago that could be seen as like not racially motivated or whatever, but, there's definitely some issue there, some prejudice, some racism, whatever. And like this tragedy of something that happened like all these years ago. But it was like so crazy because when you see this email, and this lady basically wrote this like on her way out. So it got out there before anybody could go through and cancel it or or delete it or whatever.
This was somebody leaving the company.
I'm sorry?
This was somebody leaving the company and that was their last email?
This was somebody getting fired from in my department, getting fired from their job as a manager. And I guess she just wanted to go out in a blaze of glory and sent out this scathing email. And there were so many mixed messages in there. Like, are you calling somebody racist? Are you not? Or are you being completely unclear about it because you want to convey a message in one hand, but you also don't want to like put something out there to where you could like turn around and get sued for like slander or, you know, whatever it is. So it was like, yeah, so it could have been taken either way. And, you know, I figured out what she meant by it because I did my own research. But yeah, it was just one of those crazy things. Like, it was one of the craziest emails I've ever read, but it was like so much stuff in there. She threw out so many like kind of accusations, but not fully. You know, it's like she said just enough to get the point across without getting herself in any kind of trouble. But, you know, if you're somebody just reading it,
decoding,
you know, it requires you to kind of have to go through and look into it a little bit further to see what the actual meaning was because it wasn't clear.
Yeah, I definitely think that it does fall into the place of like decoding mixed signals because it's like, hey, what do you mean by that? Like, do she not like Spanish people? Is that why you're being fired? I'm trying to understand. And then what does her husband of 20 years ago has to do with this? So you kind of like confused, like, okay, did we just get into someone else's personal drama? I thought about something that came across my desk today was in regards to an officer in St. Johns County, where allegedly News4Jack had learned that Corporal Greg Suki, I believe the last name is, he posted on, I'm assuming on social media somewhere, and the comment he left said, we need, and I quote, we need like a 3-day open season on the homeless, period, no bag limit, end quote. This is the comment that this officer posted, right? And I feel that I'm like, okay, obviously he's on administrative leave. Obviously he wasn't immediately fired for this comment. But I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, if I was a lawyer, like, can he be defended? Like, because it's not very direct, but at the same time it's direct, right? So he said, and I quote again, we need like a 3-day open season on the homeless, no bag limit. You feel like is any decoding note in there? Can he like make up that it meant something else?
Yeah, I saw that one, and I just was like, to me, it's pretty clear. He obviously does not like the homeless, and just thinks the best way to, you know, rid the homeless problem is to rid us of the homeless people. But I'm sure there's some level of PR or somebody, or he's going to come out and say like, well, that's not really what I meant. It was taken out of context.
I don't think he said that. I might be in denial. I don't want to believe he said that. Like, I feel like maybe his things was hacked.
I mean, it was a story that came out that he tweeted that, and they showed the tweet or the post or whatever it was. So I mean, he said it.
So he admitted to that? He admitted that he said that?
Oh, you're saying that maybe somebody else wrote it.
Yeah, in his thing, because what city official, but honestly though, what city official is going to go and do that and risk their job for that? Like, honestly, that's just the way I'm thinking about it.
Freedom of speech. What if they say it's freedom of speech?
Yeah.
I mean,
freedom of speech is limited to those officials, though. They have freedom of speech, but look at he's limited. Even Trump, I think they threw him off of Twitter. Didn't they throw Trump off of Twitter? Okay.
No,
freedom of speech only. Yeah. Freedom of speech only means that you won't go to jail for saying what you said. It doesn't mean that a private company or an organization or whatever can't get rid of you or disassociate themselves or fire you or end a relationship because it doesn't fall in line with their core ideals or whatever. But freedom of speech just means you can say that and not go to jail for it.
And that's what you're saying, Tim, and I agree with you. The thing is, with freedom of speech, you're still going to limit what you're saying because you represent a company. Even though that's not him, that's not his company per se, he still represents the law. Yeah. So he would have been, I personally feel like he would have been a little bit more careful. That's just me. But then
I mean, it happens quite a bit where people put stuff out there like that and don't think about it, or I mean, think about how many times you see in the news where they went back and found a tweet from somebody from 15 years ago that even something that may have been all right or acceptable 15 years ago isn't acceptable now, and they use that against them. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, maybe giving the benefit of the doubt that maybe somebody tweeted, you know, but at the same time, I'm like, well, this guy isn't a celebrity, and he's just an officer. I think he's not like any kind of big official. So who's really going to go out and, you know, like hack into his account and tweet stuff for him? I don't know. So
It's very interesting. Very interesting. So obviously, I guess we feel that it was not much decoding here. It was very direct that he was speaking specifically to body bagging homeless people like turkeys. All right. That was just one example that I thought about, but I do feel like we do run into a problem where it's like, how do we solve these issues, right? Like, how do we eliminate the gap, right? And I feel that sometimes I am an over communicator. I want to over communicate and ensure you understand what I'm saying. I think that sometimes we do need to, I think sometimes, you know, in the world we live in, we want to be short, sweet, and direct. But I do feel some things need to be lengthy. Some things need to not go through emails. Some things do not need to go through text messages. I think some things need to be a direct phone call or face-to-face interaction to limit these things from happening. I think that is one of, I think that's one big solution to this problem. And because, you know, things can be taken out of context very easily. Definitely in the world that we live in with all these, you know, I know my son, sometimes he texts me, he's 12, and he'll use like these new abbreviations or whatever you want to call them. You know, when I was coming up, we just LOL, you know, something simple. Now you have like all these, you know, letters that's bunched together. I'm like, I have no idea what you're trying to say. I have like, speak to me in English pure form, because I don't know what is this, but it's like in SMH and they did this LOL, and then it's like all these abbreviations after that. You like, I have no idea what you're trying to say to me. Can we talk real quick?
I remember riding around with my kid. This had to be 3 or 4 years ago. It was the first time he was driving my car after he got his permit. And we're driving around, and, you know, I had him every other weekend. So, you know, things could change every 2 weeks, you know, from like he was this way one week, and then the next week he's completely, you know, the next time he's completely different. So we're riding around and we're talking about something. I don't remember what it was in relation to, but I was telling a story about something, and he starts laughing, and he's like, "Oh, say less." And I'm like, I've never heard that term before. And I'm thinking, man, did this little joker just tell me to shut up? You know,
I
like,
know, right?
and he's like, "No, man, no, it means like," you know, I don't even remember exactly what it meant, but it wasn't what I thought, you know. And it was like, again, it was like, I don't know how to decode this. Like, this is some new slang or whatever that I'm not familiar with. And he said it, and I was like, "Hey, man," you know, I thought he was telling me to stop talking, you know, and it turned out it had some other.
Well,
meaning.
Well, technically, that is what you say. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it means, but like, it's not a rude way of saying it.
It's like say less. I agree with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I get what you're saying.
No more.
Yeah, like I understand or I agree is what the meaning is. What AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, I didn't take it that way initially. I was like, "Hey, man, what does that mean?"
What do you mean? First of all, sir, I'm over here letting you drive my car. You telling me to shut up? Like,
You telling me to shut up? Like,
so I do believe like one of the solutions to the problem is definitely either over communicating it through, if you have to send the message and there's no way to talk, definitely thoroughly over communicating, explaining thoroughly, just to make sure that that the message is not misconstrued in the delivery and in the receiving part. I think that we are, because like I mentioned before, because we're in a very direct, get straight to the point environment, I think that things can sometimes get lost in the messaging and the receiving. So definitely picking up that phone in the work environment and saying like, or hey, let's jump on a quick call, or hey, you know, let's talk later when you have some time. Things of that nature, just to make sure that everyone is on the same accord. Because I know in corporate America with me, I've had those, you know, you have to clear someone respectfully. Like, what do you mean by this? Like, you know, like, hold
Yeah.
on, like, what you trying to say? So I understand like how messages can be misconstrued. Definitely in the work environment, even in the personal environment. Definitely with all this new slang that's coming out, right? Say less. Be like, wait a minute. I remember
Yeah.
my little sister. She was like, I need to get on my Zoom. And at one point when that was going around, and I'm thinking, oh, you got a Zoom call. Like, that's what I thought it meant. But it's something from TikTok, and it means like, oh, I got to get up and I got to get at it. Like, I have to, you know, be on top of things like I once were. And me coming from corporate America, being a lot older, I'm thinking like, oh, she really got to get on her Zoom call. That's what I thought the whole time. But unfortunately, it
It
was
kind of means like,
a slang word. So sometimes definitely communicating a little bit more, definitely in the slang world that we live in, does help out a lot better. Keyshawn, did you want to dive into anything with us today?
I would probably just basically just agree with everything y'all said. When it comes to like miscommunication in the corporate world, like I would probably say, the best way to avoid it, well, after doing some research, the best way to avoid it is to kind of separate, basically the way you talk outside of work and the way you talk while you're at work. You know what I mean? Because usually that's where the miscommunication and the misinterpretation like occurs. Like, you know what I mean? Like somebody at work could be talking about something, and or somebody could be at work and in a meeting, and they're finishing up a meeting, and instead of saying, hey you guys, that was a great meeting, you know what I mean, any other comments, and instead of somebody saying, well, yeah, that was great, thank you for the input, or thank you for your information, somebody could say less, you know what I'm saying, in the meeting room, and they'll be like it'll kind of be taken, out of context, like what you mean by say less, or somebody will get confused, like what's that, so like again, like the best way to avoid that will probably be just to like, separate one from the two. Like once you step into the corporate office or the corporate world or your workforce or job or wherever you at, kind of try and sound or be as professional as possible, that way like people don't misconstrue, like miscommunicate or misinterpret whatever it is that you say, and you avoid like problems and basically errors, because of course when you at work and somebody takes something out of context, it could lead to all type of problems. Like it could lead to an argument, you know what I'm saying, it could lead to something not getting done properly or correctly. So that's what I would probably say would be my most valuable message or input for the all around topic.
Okay, I love that. Just making sure that we're separating, um, definitely separating the corporate world from our day-to-day communication. I think that definitely helps as well. And I see how it can be misconstrued. But what if it's like our day-to-day? Because for me, sometimes, like I said before, I'm an over communicator. So I want to know every little detail prior to like explain it to me in detail. I don't want a short, concise answer. The short and concise can sometimes be like, you don't get all the details and it doesn't make sense. It's like it's like, what do you mean by that? Do you guys feel that maybe uh do you like over communication, or do you like short and concise?
I prefer short and concise, to be honest with you. I do. I prefer that. That's like my preference. It's like, yeah, I don't like when people go on and on, because it kind of feels like they're not really talking about anything after a certain point.
Oh
It's
my
just like
goodness.
it's just
I like
dragging.
people just getting to the point. It don't matter if it has to be a
Yeah,
long thing,
like
but it could be long. It could be a long explanation, or it could be short. Either way it
yeah,
goes, like it has to be a point. I
exactly.
personally just like clarification. Just be clear. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Like,
I'm sorry. You said it too. After you said it, it was like sometimes you need a in-depth, detailed like answer, and like sometimes that is needed, but again, in my opinion, I don't think it's always needed in every situation. You know what I mean? So that's why, like,
Yeah,
sometimes
I agree with that. So, date and time scenario for everything. Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of the I think it's called DISC, DISC exam, or not really an exam. It's more like a personality profile. I've had to do it a couple of times when I've gotten promotions at work. And I know it, I think it's mostly given for like leadership purposes. And it's funny when, the two different answers, like Ashley's saying, like she wants details, details, details. And others are saying, like we just get to the point, just give me the basics or whatever. And it's funny that particular exam or personality profile, whatever, like it actually breaks it down. Like D, I, S, and C all stand for different things. I don't remember exactly what it is, but that's basically how it breaks it down. It's like, okay, like your personality is the kind of personality that just and it's different leadership styles or whatever. And like one is literally like just tell me what I need to know, just give me the basics, give me the high level overview. And then down at the other end, like diagonally down on the other end of the spectrum is like, I need all the details, I need to know everything that's going on or whatever. And it's so interesting. When I saw my results, I was like, and they'd ask you some weird, scenario questions too, like scenarios you would I would like, what, like, that's not even like based in reality, but it's just, your answers kind of gauge which direction it sends you. And it gives you this whole analysis about, how you are and all that. It's just interesting to hear y'all's, the differences, in the way, y'all feel about, the communication. It just reminded me of that personality profile that I've had to do a couple times. And to be honest with you, I can't even remember. I think it said I was detail oriented or whatever. I don't know how they came to that conclusion with the questions they asked, but again, I don't have a degree. I don't have a degree at all, quite at the very moment. But I don't have the degree, in psychology or anything like that to understand it. But it just when y'all went through that whole, the differences there, it reminded me of that test or that profile thing that I took years ago.
I wonder if like maybe on your business headers or on signatures and stuff, it'd be cool like if like in corporate America you put like your personality type, so then like that person knows how to work with you.
I don't know. Maybe it also might like determine whether or not they hire you. You know what I'm saying too? Because like,
Yeah,
if they see,
Well, I'm talking about like once you're like already working there and you see how he said like their team made them do like this personality thing to like this leadership thing. And I'm like, what if you like put that in your signature like while you're working with them? So like if you're like super direct and precise, you're like, you don't take it personal. You just like, oh, okay, that's just how Tim is. You're not overthinking it because that they're that type of person. And then you now know how to work with them because you like, okay, they're this A type or whatever type of person. So I know that in this email, even though I'm a thorough person, I'm going to respond to them in a short, concise way to where they can get it. And then when they respond back, they can like, well, okay, this Ashley is this type of person. So let me be detailed on why we're doing it.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I thought you said from the jump, like from like out the gate, yeah.
Oh no.
You know?
No, then they're like, I'm definitely not hiring this girl. She's gonna ask questions about everything. Like why we're changing it, why we're doing this. Yeah. Well, we thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Talk to Me Nights podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends who you think, hey, you need some communication, clean up. Listen to this podcast. Definitely send it over to them. We'll love to interact with you guys, and we'll catch you on our next episode.